So, just a show of hands, who here knows how to play chess? Anyone play on a regular basis? What about just once in a while? If you play, that's great. If you don't, that's okay. Whether you play or don't play, I think it's important for you to know a little bit about the history of chess in order to better understand where this ancient game comes from and how it has developed over the years. Chess has become more popular in recent years, and I think if you're going to start playing, it's important to know a bit about the history because it gives you a greater appreciation of the game. So, the purpose of this talk is to better inform you about the history of chess and to give you a better understanding of the origins of the game and the game today. So, let's get started. So, chess started off in the form of a game called Chaturanga in the 6th century CE in India, and the game included chariots, elephants, and cavalry, which were all components of the military in India at the time. And the game then spread to Persia around the 7th century CE and later to Europe around 1000 CE. And what you see here is the Isle of Lewis chess set, which was a chess set made in Scotland in the 12th century. So, one thing to note about the history of chess is the development of the rules. So, by 1300, the pawn was able to move two squares on its first turn rather than just one. And it really took another 300 years for this rule to be widely accepted. And castling didn't develop until the 15th century, but had limited usage until the 18th century. So now that we've talked a little bit about the early history and the rules, let's talk about some of the players. So, up until 1886, the title of world champion was unofficial. And more than 50 years earlier, there was a match between Louis Charles de la Bourdonnais and Alexander McDonald. And Bourdonnais won this match. And this was really the first time that a major chess event was reported extensively in newspapers and analyzed in books. Um, when Bourdonnais died in 1840, he was succeeded by Howard Staunton, who defeated Pierre Charles de Saint Amant in 1843. And Staunton used his title as unofficial world champion to popularize the Staunton pattern set, which looks something like this. And all major chess sets stem from this particular design, the Staunton design. So every major chess set that you see nowadays will be based on this design. Staunton organized the first major chess tournament in London in 1851, and the first winner of that tournament was a guy by the name of Adolf Anderssen. And this tournament actually inspired American players to create a national championship and that was called the First American Chess Congress, which was won by Paul Morphy. Now, you might be thinking, these are unofficial world champions, but what about official world champions? Well, the first official world champion was crowned when Wilhelm Steinitz played Johann Zukertort in 1886, and Steinitz won the match, making him the first official world champion. Skip a few years to Jose Raul Capablanca, who was the third world champion, when he defeated Emmanuel Lasker in 1921. And he was a Cuban grandmaster, and he was known for his exceptional endgame. He was known for having an exceptional endgame. And for those who don't know, chess is divided into three phases: the opening, the middle game, and the endgame. And the endgame usually happens near the end of the game when there are very few pieces left on the board, and players have to train their endgame skills in order to be good chess players. And it's clear that Capablanca's training and talent for the endgame was extraordinary. He even had a period of 8 years where he went undefeated between 1916 and 1924. So Alexander Alekhine, who was a Russian grandmaster, became the fourth world champion when he defeated Capablanca in 1927. And he was a great tactician, and he was known for his aggressive style of play. And he was also opening theoretician somewhat, and he has an opening named after him called the Alekhine's Defense. So you might be thinking, well, are there any American chess world champions? And you know, we've seen English grandmasters, French, German, Russian world champion, and a Cuban world champion. But are there any American world champions? Well, you're right, there are, because Bobby Fischer was the first American world champion when he became the first American world champion when he defeated Boris Spassky in 1972. And this match between the two was publicized as a confrontation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and it attracted the most worldwide attention of any other chess match in history. And actually, Bobby Fischer became a little bit paranoid during the match, and he thought that the Russians were plotting against him, trying to kill him. Now, there's not much basis for that other than the fact that he was paranoid, but I can understand his concerns to a certain degree. And there was even a game during the match, where he wanted one of the games to not be televised and to be played in a private room with no cameras or spectators. And this was the first time that had ever happened. And he actually ended up winning that game. Maybe he got in his opponent's head, I'm not sure, but he ended up winning that game. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about his game, though. He was a great tactician. He had an aggressive style of play, and he had a very great intuition for the game. Very good intuition. And a lot of people consider him to be the greatest chess player ever. Another guy who is considered to be the greatest chess player ever, and even more so, is a guy by the name of Garry Kasparov. And Garry Kasparov became world champion when he defeated Anatoly Karpov in 1985. And he actually became the youngest world champion at the age of 22. Um, he had as many battles with Karpov throughout his time as world champion. He defended his title against Karpov three times in a span of 5 years between 1985 and 1990. In 1997, he actually played a computer chess program known as IBM's Deep Blue, and he was the first world champion to lose to a computer. It wasn't a world championship match, but it was a spectacle, and he ended up losing that match to Deep Blue in 1997. Fast forward to the present day, Magnus Carlsen, who's is technically no longer world champion, because he actually just decided to give up the title without playing a match. He was just tired of playing world championship matches and decided to give it up. But he is easily the most dominant and the strongest chess player in the world today. And he has a peak rating of 2882, and which is the greatest chess rating of all time. And he's hovering around 2850 at the moment. And he is great in all facets of the game: the opening, the middle game, and the end game. And he's a great practical player. He knows basically everything about chess. and he's great in all facets of the game. So I'd like to conclude this talk, and as I've taken you through the early history from India to Persia to Europe to a bit about the history of the world champions from Steinitz to Magnus Carlsen, I hope you've learned something about this ancient yet popular game, and I hope this talk inspires you to continue learning about chess and chess history because it truly is a great game. Thank you.